Hello, welcome to another petrol blog video. I'm starting this video with the 406 Coupe and some goats. The reason being is this is my sort of half-hearted attempt to edit footage that was taken last week with some voiceover that's taken this week. It will all make sense in a minute, but I hope it will. And if my editing is half decent, then it'll all pull together quite well. But I have news on the 406 Coupe, which will come probably in the next video. I also have news on the Range Rover, the oil of which is in there. But don't worry, there hasn't been a big disaster on the Range Rover, far from it. That is the spillage from my son's first oil change. Not too bad, could have been worse, but I do apologise to Greenpeace and the animals of the world. So yeah, without further ado, let's crack on with the video on the Beer Money Safrane, aka Kate Moss. Here we go. So 12 years of nothingness. Let's see what the air attack warning man says. Oh no.
Warning. Engine immobilizer is set.
Okay.
You can't start the engine.
No, you're right. I forgot that.
Refer to handbook.
Yes, I know. Okay. Okay, so the immobilizer is now not set. So the air attack warning man should say happier things. The automatic transmission light is still on, but here we go. So if this editing is worked, which I won't know until I go back into the house to work on it, I should have left you on a cliffhanger, a bit like a rubbish soap opera. Be El Dorado, wouldn't it? If Petroblog was a soap opera, it would be El Dorado. And I apologise to overseas viewers, that would make no sense at all. But it was a disastrous soap opera on BBC One. Yes, so where were we? We were just starting the engine, which shows you we got to a certain point. Let me tell you how we got to that certain point. If I haven't mentioned already, or if you haven't noticed from the video, a chap called Adam White joined me for the resurrection of the Safrane. Adam White is a famous YouTuber. Can I call him that? He's much more famous than Petroblog. He's famous for his mini restoration, or mini build actually. A very talented mechanic, very talented welder, very talented sprayer, very talented at everything actually, as it turned out. So he popped down from Dorset to be, I would say assist, but actually he was the leader of the gang. He was the man in charge. And I sent him a list of things I was going to do, and he advised quite rightly to crank the engine first, manually crank the engine. So that was the first thing we did. After the car's been laid up for any length of time, it's a really good idea to check A, it hasn't seized, and B, prevent any damage to the pistons or anything like the starter motor just by manually starting the engine. So that was the first thing we did, and that went well. So small progress. That deserved a quick swig of Coke to celebrate the first bit of good news. Second bit of good news was we removed the under tray, big plastic under tray. That is normal for a sort of a French car of the 90s. Normally the under trays are, to use a technical term, buggered. But this one, apart from one missing screw and one section held on by a cable tie, was almost as new. So credit to everybody who's looked after this car in the past, that the under tray was in good nick. A minor victory, but still a victory. And actually it got better, because once we removed the under tray, the bottom of the engine is remarkably clean. The gearbox is clean. There's no oil leak from the bottom of the engine from what we can see. No leak from the transmission fluid, although we'll come on to a transmission in a minute because there is a potential issue there. Well, there is an issue there. But even it got as far as the fact that the CV boots look brand new. You wouldn't believe that the CV boots have been stood still for 12 years. So good news all round so far. So with that, with progress being made, the next stage was to drain the oil. It took a little bit longer than we hoped because the sump plug wasn't the kind of standard sump plug. I can't describe. Wasn't the kind of standard sump plug you would expect. So we needed to sort of improvise with the tool for getting that off. Once we had, turns out the engine oil was really clean. So even though I don't think it had been serviced since 118,000 miles, so probably about 12,000 miles before it was laid up, the oil was in really good nick. So that was more positive news, and it called for another swig of Coke. So with that, we removed the spark plugs. Now, Well, the good news about the spark plugs is that they were in really good condition. They were Renault spark plugs, and nothing untoward at all. Certainly, I am going to replace them. I have ordered 4 new spark plugs, but you could certainly run on them for a good few years yet. The only issue we had is that there was oil in 2 of the plug sockets. So there's obviously an oil leak from the top of the engine, probably the gasket. Bit weird. You'd think after 12 years in isolation that the oil would sink to the bottom. So there's clearly an oil leak at the top of the engine, which needs to be looked at. Then drain the coolant. Again, positive news. The coolant's not muddy, not dirty. Again, kind of maybe sort of signifies that the car was well maintained, which is pretty much what Robert said on the phone a number of times, that the car was well maintained right up to the day it was laid up. Obviously put new water in, didn't put new coolant in, but just put new water in just to get things running through. So it will need a coolant change at some point. Then put 10 litres of fuel in, maybe just over 10 litres of fuel in. There was almost no fuel left in, which is probably a blessing actually. But we figured put some fresh fuel in. I'd put fresh fuel in after 6 months, let alone 12 years. And then it was a case of, I think the final thing we did was just check the air filter. And that was in good nick. Lots of gravel in the air filter box, weirdly. Hopefully it's gravel from Luxembourg, maybe gravel from Brussels. But we removed the gravel and then pumped up the tyres. Perhaps optimistically, we figured that if it does start, and we are going to move it, we need to pump up the tyres. And with that, it was time to fire her up once I'd sorted out the immobiliser. I've got to get into the habit of, obviously when I reconnect the battery every time, it resets the immobiliser. I have to get in the habit of just putting it on the key fob every time. So without further ado, let's hand back to the footage from last week to see if the Safrane starts. The automatic transmission light is still on, but here we go.
Warning, fuel level low. Automatic transmission operating in safety mode. Refer to handbook. Automatic transmission operating in safety mode. Refer to handbook. Front passenger door not closed. Driver's door not closed. Bonnet not closed. Warning, fuel level low.
A little bit of blue smoke. But she's running. It's no longer blue. Well, she's running for the first time in 12 years. Wow. She lives.
I think that's just oil burning off.
Smells like it.
There's no extra leaks probably all over the manifold actually.
Yeah.
Sounds alright though.
Oil pressure's good. Wow.
Well,
we've done it. We've got to, whatever happens, we've got her moving. I'd love to see if she goes backwards or forwards.
oh no. Wow. this wheel's locks. Not the handbrake on. Oh. Well, the handbrake's amazing. Because it's dragging, pushing itself along.
I don't know why. So what do you think of that then? Great news. The sense of euphoria probably didn't come across on the video. Probably because I was more surprised. I think we're all quite surprised that it all went so well. We're not saying we're out of the woods. We're not saying it's perfect. The air attack warning man is telling us that there's something wrong with the transmission. So it's in safe mode. And bringing it up the track to the barn, you could tell she wasn't running particularly well. She was quite sluggish. We think, and we're hopeful, keeping our fingers crossed, that it's the transmission fluid. So we're going to get that changed. That's the next course of action, as well as getting the coolant looked at. Have ordered 4 new spark plugs. I mean, they were in good nick, but I just think it's good practice. Excuse the water. It's not great. It really isn't great. We think we've isolated the problem, but we're not having a wet barn. Means I might have to accelerate my plans to open the Petroblog Museum of the Ordinary to get these cars under cover properly. So I apologise that the footage is quite dark. It was either do it in the barn and move the 406 out onto the grass temporarily, or not do it at all. But I figured that we need some new footage, and we need some good news in the world. And the good news is that the Beer Money Safrane is moving. So she's in here drying off, and I think it's probably a good idea to kind of start her again. So we'll do that now. So you can have the pure and utter joy of, not quite the euphoria of starting it for the first time in 12 years, but what is this? This will be the 3rd time in 12 years. And I'm not going to run it for too long because, like I said, I'm not too, not too confident about the coolant. So we'll I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll fire her up. Well, we'll turn on ignition, turn off that, and we'll turn on the air attack warning man. Let's see what he's got to say.
Warning. Engine immobilizer is set. You can't start the engine.
Yes, I'm going to have to get
Refer to handbook.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get used to this one, aren't I? Right, that should shut him up. Okay. Right, here we go.
Left-hand brake light. Faulty. Automatic transmission. Operating in safety mode. Refer to handbook. Warning. Fuel level low.
I'm not convinced that the fuel gauge is working, and I'm not convinced that the temperature gauge is working because they haven't moved. Because I put 10 litres, over 10 litres of fuel in, and that hasn't budged. And I would have thought that 10 litres would take it over the red. So she's running, and she's running really nicely. There was blue smoke when we started it, but I think that's a combination of all the oil when we did all the oil change, etc. But I would say she's running nicely. Like I say, I'm hopeful. I'm really, really hopeful. Look at that inside. Isn't it beautiful? I'm really hopeful that the transmission light is the oil, which I'll be changing in due course. I've now got the confidence to get the wheels and tyres done. I'd like to get these refurbished. I think that'll be a nice thing to do. I'm going to turn her off. But I can't believe, and I've got to say a big thanks to Adam as well for the work. Last week was a great weekend for reasons that we'll come on to again in another video. As you can see, the water temperature and fuel gauge doesn't seem to be moving. And he's not saying a lot. Have you noticed he's not saying much?
Warning. Fuel level low. Driver's door not closed. Bonnet, not closed. Left-hand brake light, faulty. Automatic transmission, operating in safety mode. Refer to handbook.
The weird thing about the air attack warning man is he's much calmer when he says that the automatic transmission isn't working properly than he is telling you when the brake light's faulty. I don't think he's got his priorities right. One other thing I want to say, well, a couple of other things I want to say. I want to say a big thank you to Matt Linley. If you remember on the back of the car when it was delivered, there was what I thought was a piece of tape covering up a crack in the rear light. Turned out it was a faded GB sticker from Safrane. And look what we have here. Matt Linley sent me a note on YouTube to say that he's found one on eBay. And it's now here, come all the way across from France. I probably have to put it in isolation for 2 weeks, do I? Bearing in mind what's going on in the world. I didn't. Well, actually, it has been in isolation because it's been in the Safrane for 2 weeks. So it's now done its isolation and it's now ready to go on the car. However, I'm not going to put it back where it was because I don't like the position of it. And I also think that it doesn't go on until the car's got an MOT. So this is kind of like a certificate or a rosette to say that you've made it. You are back on the road. So that will go back on the car, just not yet. I also need to thank the following people for joining Club Petrol Blog. Darren Walker of the Free Pine Chips channel. I'll put a link in the description because he's like the American cousin, Petrol Blog's American cousin. Great channel. Andy Badger, Alistair Leslie, Marianne Smith, Tracy Andrews, Paul Inslee, Martin Richardson and Andrew Pullen. Many thanks for joining Club Petrol Blog. Adam White is also an honorary member of Club Petrol Blog for services to French Tat and services to Tatty Range Rovers as well. More on that in a future video. But I'm delighted. I'm really, really pleased that she's moving. Are you? Are you as excited as I am? Am I getting too carried away? I love this car. I already love this car. However, it can't sit in the barn because I need to put the Peugeot back in there because I've got many things to do on the Peugeot and some progress updates which I'll come on to probably in the next video. Although I might be doing something else around about called Just for Men. More on that soon. I know I've rambled a lot, but that's kind of normal for these videos. And I know I've kind of digressed many times, but that's because I'm going to sell you a mug with I digress on one day. And I also know that this isn't the best production method in the world. But I'm happy with the Tat at the moment, even if I'm not happy with the weather. Look, the horse isn't happy with the weather. And even the goats have disappeared inside. I am definitely digressing now. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.